Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our second Maryland Vision Zero quarterly meeting. Appreciate everybody being here in person, and obviously we're live streaming, so appreciate those who are joining us as well remotely. Always an important time to get together with our leaders throughout the different disciplines to talk about where we are in our goals to reach zero fatalities on Maryland roadways and kind of do an assessment and then figure out if there are additional things that we need, actions we need to take. So we have a full agenda today, so I want us to jump right into it, and I will turn it over to Dr. Tim Kearns, who's our Highway Safety Office Director, but also our Vision Zero Coordinator.
Good morning, everybody. We could just take a minute to go around the room and let everybody introduce themselves so folks attending can know who's here. As Christy said, I'm Tim Kearns. I'm Director of Maryland's Highway Safety Office and the Vision Zero Coordinator for Maryland.
Good morning, Joe McAndrew, Assistant Secretary at the Maryland Department of Transportation.
Candace Bailey, Safety Data Analyst at MDOT.
I'm Will Pine, State Highway Administrator.
Terry Seuss with State Highway Administration.
Song Park from State Highway Administration.
Bruce Gardner, Executive Director of MDTA.
Colonel Joseph Scott, MDTA Chief of Police.
Jonathan Rogers, MDOT.
Mark Walden, Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Tim Richards, Section Manager for Safety Programs at the Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Cindy Burch, Baltimore Metropolitan Council.
Todd Lang, Baltimore Metropolitan Council.
Cynthia Sprague, Maryland Highway Safety Office, Pedestrian Bicycle Speed Aggressive Program.
Jenna Bayhus, Crash Course, Crash Center for Research and Education.
Margaret Lehman, Deputy Director, Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Becky Spicer, Crash Course.
Anna Lewandowski, MBA.
Candice Holford, MDOT.
Great. And so for everybody around the edges, we are trying to do the audio a little bit differently. We heard there was some difficulty hearing last time, so it is through the conference speakerphone right here in the middle. So for those who are on the outer edges, if you could just kind of project your voice just to help make sure for those who are remote that they can hear us as well as possible. Thanks, Tim.
Yep. Thanks, Jesse. Test work. There we go. I just wanted to start off to give everybody an update of where we are with the number of fatalities that we've seen across the state. I'll start off with a quick update for 2024. The number for 2024 is now at 580 fatalities. We had 2 reports submitted from 2 different jurisdictions for fatalities that occurred in December. It's some of the reporting policies that delay the reports getting into the system a little bit. So you see 1 and 2 fatalities, get added as we go through the first 4, 5, 6 months of the next calendar year. But right now we're at 580 fatalities for 2024, which is still a significant decrease from where we were in 2023. The good news, though, is that year to date, this data is as of Tuesday morning. We are only at 103 fatalities for 2025. That is a 30% reduction from where we were at this point last year. So there are 39 fewer fatalities in 2025 than there were in 2024. So that is good news. I don't think about all that discrepancy can be accounted by delayed reporting. I think we do actually have a reduced number of fatalities on the roads. As you can see, though, our breakdown is still pretty much similar. About a quarter of our fatalities are still related to vulnerable road users, with about just over half being drivers and then another 15 to 20% being passengers. So that's where we stand as of today in 2025. I was talking to Christy earlier. Last year, April was our worst month last year. There were 64 fatalities in April of 2024. So far this month, we have 15, even though there have been some newsworthy crashes that we've seen just at the beginning of the month. But so far this month, we are nowhere near on pace for 64. So hopefully the trend will continue and we'll be able to keep the reduction underway. They are not in order. So I have to hop down to get to legislative. There we go. We did want to talk a little bit about legislative session, as everybody in here is familiar with. Just ended last week. A lot of bills related to Vision Zero were heard, and a lot were passed that will ultimately help reduce fatalities. It will continue to move us in the right direction. Some of those bills were departmental bills from MVA. I don't know if you want to talk about our departmental bills. At the top of the list, the one that came from the Highway Safety Office was having a member of MVA or the Highway Safety Office on the Cannabis Public Health Advisory Council. Traffic safety was not a member of that council when they originally passed it, and because of impaired driving and impaired driving being related to about 30% of our fatalities, we thought it was important to have a voice at that table, and that bill had no problems going through.
Yep, important. So I'll talk about the other MBA departmental. So House Bill 189, that was our CDL disqualification for drunk driving. As most of you know, in addition to standard actions that we take related to driver's license for CDL drivers, there are additional disqualifications and restrictions. There was a section of our statute that didn't quite align with the federal requirements, and so this helps ensure that we're taking all disqualification action related to CDL drivers who have drunk driving PBJs in this case, which the federal government considers a conviction for their purpose. We also have House Bill 463, so that is an important step forward that actually was brought to us by our driver's license examiners, saying that they were seeing a trend of individuals who have driving experience and are required to take the 3-hour course there under the statute, but didn't know the U.S. law. So they knew how to drive in their home country. They were coming here with their out-of-country license, and so they didn't have to go through driver education. But as a result, they were not clear on signs, not clear on even driving on which side of the roadway, all those things that maybe we take for granted because we've been surrounded by it. So that's a good one in that it now allows us to provide education on rules of the road, work zone safety, which obviously is very important to MDOT and other highway safety related issues to educate that driver. Senate Bill 207 is the fourth departmental, and that one is related to license reinstatement process, so making sure that there are significant periods of time that individuals who are convicted of killing somebody, having a very serious crash where they leave the scene, there are periods, there's a process already in statute how they get back their license, but this actually establishes a 5-year period of a waiting period for them to be able to get that license back. There is a provision that was added to the legislative process that for hardship reasons, they can ask the MBA to consider reinstatement early, but I think it sends the right message as a state that these are serious actions that we highly want to make sure that they've been able to change their ways before they get their license back. As the person who reviews, along with many others, every case of a fatality and somebody trying to get their license back is something I know we all take very seriously in terms of giving that person the ability to drive again, and hoping that they have evolved and changed their ways and understand the seriousness. So there were several other bills that I know are listed up there, part of the larger kind of safety infrastructure package, but we were happy that all 4 of the departmental bills that were on the safety agenda were passed.
Several bills related to vulnerable road users, allowing bicycles to be operated in different locations, and related to Jay's Law passed, and there were some other vulnerable road user legislation was brought up and discussed. Typically, it will take several tries to get some of the bills that are interested to advocates to go through. So this year was a good start in moving some of those along as well. And as has been the case for the past several years, there were some speed monitoring and automated traffic enforcement bills that came up. There were a number of bills that came up, and there were a number of bills that passed. So there continues to be a move towards using speed monitoring and automated traffic enforcement, not just for work zones and school zones, but applying it to other safety corridors, to be able to apply even automated traffic enforcement for some other types of violations, such as red light running and stop sign running. And there is some movement to increase that a little bit to look at distraction and things like that. Technology is getting to the point where they will be able to look at using different types of technology to identify at-risk drivers out there that are posing a danger not only to themselves but to the other folks that are using the roadways.
And notably on some of our major roadways, we've got ICC now on 695 and 83, in addition to what was in the city, now in the county as well. So obviously that was location of serious crash that took many of our highway safety workers' lives. So, an important step forward there to see that speed is increasing, as we know, as we talked about from an enforcement perspective. And so also making sure we're looking at our state roadways that have the higher speed limits is important.
PSAP project update, Will.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Will Pine, State Highway Administrator. And SHA and the MDOT team continue to make great strides on our Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, or what we call PSAP. In March, we advertised our first 2 contracts, yay team, one in Prince George's County on Maryland 650 from Maryland 193 to Montgomery County, and the second in Montgomery County on Maryland 650 from Northampton Drive to Powder Mill Road. These 2 projects will implement geometric redesigns to calm traffic at conflict points with bikes and pedestrians, and are taking bids this month for the project in Montgomery County and next month, respectively, for Prince George's County. I'm very proud of the speed of delivery on these 2 projects. The PSAP plan was issued in May of 2023. And when I started in August of 2023, there wasn't a plan of attack yet on how to implement all of the corridors in that program. And so we worked on bringing a plan together that was in alignment with our funding, and rolled out this program, rolled up our sleeves to get the work done, and put together that ambitious plan that delivered the first cohort of projects in 2025 and 2026. So SHA took these first 2 projects through the federal approval process, planning, and full 100% design bid build design for the project, and then into procurement in less than a year and a half. This is a breakneck pace for us and just shows MDOT's commitment to deliver safety improvements very quickly. We have more of those types of PSAP projects advancing in design currently in our cohort 1, including Maryland 410, the East-West Highway in Prince George's County, Maryland 150, Eastern Avenue in Baltimore County, Maryland 2, Ritchie Highway in Anne Arundel County, and US 1, Washington Boulevard in Howard County. We've completed the first round of public engagement meetings on these projects and are actively advancing design, with expected advertisements on all 4 of those projects in the first cohort in 2026. We're also concurrently advancing cohort 2 in the following locations on US 40 Dual Highway in Washington County, US 201 Kenilworth Avenue in Prince George's County, Maryland 193 University Boulevard in Montgomery County, US 40 Philadelphia Boulevard in Harford County, Maryland 3 Business Crane Highway in Anne Arundel County, Maryland 214 Central Avenue in Prince George's County, Maryland 235 Three Notch Road in St. Mary's County, and Maryland 528 Coastal Highway in Worcester County. So we're making a lot of headway on these, including conducting public meetings. Since our last Vision Zero Commission meeting, we held meetings in January and after for US 40, Maryland 235, and Maryland 528. So we're steaming ahead on our cohort 1 and 2 projects actively. And additionally, I want to thank the hard work of the governor and the legislature during this last legislative session for providing additional funding that will help us to actively work on additional complete streets projects, including advancing the cohort 3, which we're framing out now, both PSAP and VRU projects statewide, leveraging this additional funding. We have now had the funding in our safety and spot improvement program and complete streets PIS that will keep these projects moving. An example type project that we just put out an announcement for some public engagement is Maryland 45, which just had the public meeting last week. We're also working with local communities right now and our district offices on our next round of quick build projects for calendar year 25. And we're targeting locations in districts 1, 2, 3, and 5 where we did not have quick builds last year. So lots of great activity on our pedestrian safety action plan. I'm really proud of the team for all the great work on being able to advertise our first 2 projects and a lot more continued efforts to come on that. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Thank you. We'll move on to Work Zone Awareness Week. Before we do, I didn't mention earlier that we did get a student in Montgomery County provided some written testimony for this quarterly meeting. We posted it on the website, so it's on Zero Deaths MD, but he is a Vision Zero representative from Montgomery County. He's interested in collaborating more with our group and maybe giving us some suggestions about how we could reach out more and maybe offer some sort of award for high school science fairs and things like that that focus on engineering or highway safety or education projects that they could come up at a local level. So we did post his information up there, and we can discuss that later, but it's an opportunity for us to branch out into high schools a little bit. We have several of our highway safety officers projects that are working with the high schools in Prince George's County and Montgomery, and we could potentially even have him come on in July and talk a little bit, give him a few minutes of our agenda to talk through his thoughts. He's only a junior, so he'd be back next year. Yeah. So I wanted to
if you haven't read it, it's a very thoughtful letter, and I would only wish that every young person going through driver education was quite as thoughtful as he is, and only make for better drivers, but how he's thinking about technology and safety and how that folds together from an engineering standpoint and making a difference going forward. So yeah, I think it's a great connection, and we'll see how we can engage him in the conversation moving forward.
It's great that there's a next generation.
Yep.
Works.
All right. Well, I'm going to kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Park, who's going to run through a presentation on work zone safety accomplishments and also ongoing activities. This year's campaign for work zone safety is focused on the motto, respect the zone so we all get home. That's a national brand that many states are embarking on. And we want to thank Governor Moore for his proclamation recognizing April 21st through 25th as the Work Zone Awareness Week. That is something that we're going to see governors around the nation issue similar proclamations, and it's really important that we all work hand in glove together to boost the awareness and have aligned campaigns. I also want to thank our Deputy Chief Operating Officer, Terry Seuss, for all her hard work on preparing for the Unity Ride, which will occur as part of the activities for Work Zone Awareness Week. This will be part of also, we're going to have a press conference like last year to provide additional messaging and boost awareness about work zone safety. We're currently sharing a lot of content on social media about work zone safety and bringing awareness for next week's events, including a focus on the move over law. So encourage everybody who's joining us live through the setup here or in the room to please share that content with your friends and family, as we do this in part to honor the team members who have lost their lives simply working to make Maryland infrastructure better and safer. And so with that, I'll now turn it over to Dr. Park to actually run through a few slides on the Awareness Week.
You want the power? Down arrow. We'll advance it.
Thank you, Will. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sung Park from the State Highway Administration. I will make a brief presentation about the work zone related effort the State Highway Administration has been accomplished. So SHA is working hard to improve the work zone safety. As you know, the responsibility to improve the safety, especially in work zone, is not sole responsibility of the agency, no for the contractor, no for public. To improve the safety is all collaboration work. Everyone needs to work together hard to improve the safety. So as a state agency, we have been working on updating guidelines, promoting new devices and do the enforcement and then do the public awareness. Some of you probably familiar with this graph. This is the left side of the graph is the federal highway system, safe system approach, and then right side is the switches model. So the graph just to represent like nothing is perfect, and then there is a like if we have a multiple layer, multiple redundancy protection, it will prevent fatal crashes. As you know, the work zone ASE automated speed enforcement system has been big changes since last year. The initial change was effective from the June 1st, 2024, and the new change, additional change has been effective from January 1st, 2025. One of the biggest impact is the tiered fine with based on the exceeding speed, exceeding speed, the fine has been changed as a tier from $60 to $500, and then fine is doubled when workers are present. At the bottom of the figure, the signs are the signs that you will see on the active ASE locations. And then so one of the legislative required to have a flashing sign equipped when workers are present. So SHA developed a new trailer. It's a workers present trailer as shown in the picture. So when there is an active work zone, if there is a worker on the roadway, the beacon on the side or top or bottom will be activated and flashing. And if there is an active automated enforcement occurring at that time, the fine will be doubled. And another legislative requirement is that the equipment has the blue light. So we install the blue light on all of our enforcing vehicles to have the more visibility to the public when we are actively enforcing at the locations.
And I'll just add there that the law allows for unmanned cameras. We don't currently have that contract in place. We're working to get that, but the cameras, even if there's not a vehicle associated, will also have the light.
Yes. So if like currently we have everything is unmanned, so we have a vehicle. But in the future, when we have unmanned, that unit we are expecting have a blue light on top of the enforced unit. So another effort that SHA has been made is that we have established the MOU with the Maryland State Police. So if many of you probably familiar with in the work zone, the MSB troopers at the location with the flashing light. So we renewed the MOU recently, and then we also have an agreement with the MSB. If the work zone needs to be improve more safety, we can go out to the two troopers, and one can be stationary at the work zone, and the other do the actual enforcement to the aggressive drivers. And in addition to that, we also working on updating the guidelines. So we prioritizing the safety of the both motorists and the construction workers over the mobility. So we have been revised the guideline, lane closure analysis guideline, work-zone speed limit reduction guideline, and MSB present guideline and protection vehicle guideline. I will go over briefly each one. So lane closure analysis guideline is the balancing between the safety and mobility. Before we updating, we try to prioritize the safety over the mobility. So we increase the acceptable length to extend the use of the lane closure during the daytime peak hours. So right now, the acceptable queue length is up to 4 miles, and then additional 30 minutes delay. With this new threshold, we are expecting to have wide range of the work can become accomplished in the SHA roadway during the daytime. And another one is the work zone speed limit guideline. We updated the work zone speed limit reduction guideline. So when to reduce the speed limit. So like every work zone, every roadway with a speed limit 45 miles per hour or above, they should consider the speed limit reduction. And then we also added the emphasis on the distance between actual work conducted and then roadway. So if the distance is not meeting, they are very close to each other, they have to either close the adjacent lane or reduce the speed. And we also provide another additional safety measures when speed limit reduction is not feasible or practical. And this is the protection vehicle, and also known as the truck mounted attenuator. You can see the rear side of the truck. There is attached cushion, and this cushion is to provide it to observe the kinetic energy when it was hit by the traveling vehicle, and also provide a protection to the workers on the roadway. So we have been updating our guideline when this protection vehicle can be used and where it can be used and how it can be used more clearly. And the next one is a temporary portable lumber strip, TPRS. So temporary portable lumber strip is a portable raised transverse lumber strip designed to be installed quickly and then removed quickly in the work zone or other area. To improve the driver awareness need to be enhanced. So when approaching and then driving over the portable lumber strip, the driver hears the sound, also the vibrate on the vehicle. So the use of the temporary portable lumber strip is mandatory for some of the work zone type. For example, daytime flagging with a two-lane, two-way roadway with a duration of more than 3 hours with a speed limit more than 40 miles per hour. The next one is the automated flagger assistance device, which is known as the AFAD. I think everyone is familiar with the human flagger standing on the roadway with a stop and slow pedal instruct the driver when they need to stop or when they can proceed too slowly. So this device helps to relocate the human on the roadway to the other location, and then the flagger can operate this device remotely, either by using the stop or slow sign or red and orange signal. We are expecting this device can improve the safety in the work zone. And also this one, when we drive in the work zone these days, you're probably familiar with the green light. You probably see a lot of them at these days. So this is the 2022 legislative driven guideline to improve the visibility of the equipment in the construction zone and also for snow removal. So we also developed the standard for how to use it and where the green light can be mounted.
Are the locals also evolving to move towards the green lights?
Yes.
Based on the standards that you guys
Yes.
define, so where they're, it is, I mean, I can tell the difference even myself.
Yeah, at the first time when it was introduced, I get a lot of questions. Green means go. So, after that, everyone have a positive feedback. It's very clear. They can see from the far away.
Far away. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are adopting it.
Yeah, I've seen it on MDOT vehicles. Just wasn't sure about the list.
And we gave you extra time. So.
Thank you.
Complete streets update, Candy.
Is it down? Okay. Oh, Anna's getting you out.
Yeah,
Hold
it's
on a
coming.
second.
You can wing it.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Candice Holford, Director of Active Transportation and Micromobility at MDOT Secretary's Office. We recently updated our Complete Streets policy, maybe not so recent, but just last year. And I just have a couple of updates about what's in the policy, what's in our implementation plan, and some ongoing activities that also support delivering that policy. Okay, so just starting off with how we define complete streets in the policy, we were very focused on making sure that we had a definition, and this definition emphasizes that complete streets is intentional. It's a deliberate approach to planning, designing, and constructing streets, focusing on safety for all users. We also recognize that there are other components to complete streets, other ways to think about it. Maybe it's not just an approach, maybe it's a more defined process, maybe it's a way that we think about our network as being context sensitive, maybe it's opening access to multimodal options and providing choice to users, but then also focusing on not just the safety of people, but those goods and services that are being offered using our network. And then finally focusing on complete streets applying to all phases, from planning all the way through maintenance. Okay, another way that we try to educate our stakeholders on complete streets is focusing on the roles of each user, whether you're a resident, a caretaker, a transit operator. There are different considerations when we're designing for complete streets. This is an illustration of how and where folks are using the road. This is a great graphic to illustrate to users from ages 8 to 80 about the different interactions on the roadway and considerations that planners and engineers are discussing at the table during contract development. We also emphasize that there are different contexts, different types of communities that we have to design for. So we're considering users, but also the surrounding roadway context. Here is kind of getting at the way that we set up our framework in Maryland, which was 6 different contexts actually in Maryland. Here you see 3 that are pretty commonly referred to: urban, suburban, and rural, and the type of facilities that you typically see in those contexts. And we're focused on safety. That's of huge priority. We just heard that in the work zone safety presentation. That translates to all users. And here we kind of show a representation of the impact that complete streets can have when you're considering how vehicles are moving and the crash severity. Again, we're focused on data and using proven safety countermeasures as elements in our complete streets designs. We recognize that there is a national database for crash modification factors that basically tell us how much our roads will improve by installing a sidewalk combined with a signal and perhaps some median treatments in a roadway. There are established sort of percentages of crash reductions that these design elements are associated with, and our policy encourages us to find ways to adopt those in Maryland. So the policy itself, updated last year in 2024, this slide kind of emphasizes that not just our bicycle and pedestrian master plan is championing complete streets, but also some other state plans. Here's just a listing of different excerpts from the Moore-Miller State Plan from 2024 and the Maryland Transportation Plan, a 20-year plan released in 2024, where they're emphasizing safety, all users, being the greenest state, clean energy, solving for disparities across communities. So these themes are really quite evident in all of our plans. With our complete streets policy, we recognize that SHA has for a while had a policy, but there was a need to broaden it, to update some of the performance tracking measures and to be a little more strict with our waivers and exceptions process. So those were some areas that we focused on in 2024. I would say the most notable one is getting a commitment from all of the modes, so taking that extra step beyond what's legislated for complete streets. Really quickly, the policy is several pages long, but these are 4 elements that we really tried to emphasize in there. So I would look for changes to public involvement, the way that we're engaging stakeholders, how we are tracking and reporting on safety and performance of our network, how we are establishing a purpose for our project and maintaining that from throughout all phases. We're calling that an objective statement. And then finally, making sure that we're collecting multimodal data and not just focused on level of service for vehicles when we're designing roads. Just an example of one of those key policy elements and kind of what we're focused on for multimodal data. We've come a long way with sort of creating a level of traffic stress model for our network in Maryland, and we want to make sure that we're transitioning from older measures to those newer, more relevant measures like level of traffic stress. So making sure that we're applying that to all our projects to make sure that we're designing in a way that is comfortable for all users. Same thing for walking. We're a little bit farther away from creating a model for the whole state, but once we do map all of our sidewalks in the state, we are closer to defining a level of comfort for pedestrians. So SHA is really taking the lead with that, with our travel forecasting division and some folks in our Office of Traffic Safety to make sure that there are ways that we can apply this to. Of course, our policy applies to projects in MDOT right-of-way, but how does it apply to local streets? A couple bullets here, but I'll just highlight 1 or 2 that we all know that the state can provide tools and best practices. That's kind of our responsibility, not just for the state, but for our local partners. We are also very involved in local projects, not just through grant funding, but also at those junctures where it intersects with state roads. Ideally, we want to focus on building out a network, a safe system, and that doesn't just include state roads. And then not just the streets, but we're also focused on the organizations, so the local TOTs, the local transportation and planning agencies. We're here to help you plan for those multimodal networks, to be a partner in that, to promote safety for users, and provide a framework for permitting and the like. Advocates, some of you may or may not be on the line or in the room. I am an advocate myself for complete streets, and my job is to promote complete streets. We are really grateful to have partners that are advocates for biking and walking, transit, and that multimodal sort of layer is important for complete streets. We like our advocates to be at the table to help inform and educate their own networks, but then also to involve them in the discussions that the state is having, which SHA has been able to do through their demonstration projects and Complete Streets Leadership Academy. Finally, the newest, latest, greatest update, our implementation plan. Since we had all modes sign on to the policy, all modes developed an implementation plan. We rolled that up into one that was released in March. And again, we're focusing on these sort of 6 core goals, if you will. Revising our decision-making processes was a huge one. Sharing data across all agencies is another. And we have included action items in our plan so that we can demonstrate how we're making the change. The path to our implementation plan with us signing the policy in June. We got to work between July and December of last year to do some outreach and engagement, to put out some demonstration projects, collect feedback, educate or share information at our CTP fall tour, doing a tour around the state, and then also doing webinars online to provide that information. With us finally wrapping up our implementation plan at the end of the year and releasing it early this year. Just an example, SHA created an implementation plan. As I mentioned, you'll find action items in there. You'll find a plan for how they're going to educate and train internally, but then a focus again on updating documents, guiding documents for Complete Streets. Same thing with MDA. They also have an implementation plan. Another great example of, well, what does this mean for someone who's not constructing roadway projects in the MDOT right-of-way? MBA is also a contributing partner through their driver education processes, and so I would definitely encourage you all to check out the implementation plan if you have any questions about how the Port Administration might contribute, or any of the other modes. A key focus that I mentioned before was just a change to our project processes. I would say we're really focused on these core steps you see on the right here, which is understanding the context, creating a form of a checklist to do some screening, and coordinating with leadership. Another element of the policy is creating an objective statement. MDOT is working towards creating some guidance that we can share out with our local jurisdictions, because as you'll see in an upcoming slide, this may apply to you in the future. But the point of this is just to make sure we're tracking performance of that design for pedestrians, for people on bikes, and that we have some safety measures and a purpose that remains throughout the project. Another big one for the policy is waivers and exemptions, streamlining that process. We have TSO as a part of that process now as well, and just coming up with a more defined workflow that all of the modes can adopt and create some more consistency across MDOT. Action items, you'll also find that in the plan. A couple of them are listed here. We have monthly meetings with designated champions at each of the modes. Those are representatives that meet monthly, but then also go back within the organization and help with implementation. And then finally, ongoing activities. How does this relate to other things that you might hear today? Pedestrian Safety Action Plan that started before we updated the Complete Streets policy, but it's really key in implementation, as well as our demonstration projects. It's a great way to try out new and innovative countermeasures and eventually adopt them into our toolkit. A lot of the other modes have supporting efforts. CSO's working on sidewalk data, MBA's got several campaigns, and then of course the locals all have programs that they're working on that we want to collaborate with them as well. So that's kind of where we are for the Model Complete Streets Initiative is what we're calling it. It's the umbrella for all of these supporting efforts and a way to champion everything we're trying to do with the policy and implementation. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. And we do have a webpage, mdot.maryland.gov/completestreets. Thank you.
Thanks, Candice, for your leadership on this. And I'll just say, to me, sitting at the Secretary's office, kind of helping support the endeavor, this is a year of implementation, right, of a policy that is wide-ranging and, if fully implemented, culture shifting and delivering a different type of product that's ultimately delivering a safer system. So I think one of the things that's really impressive, and I appreciate all my modal administrative partners and the safety focus that you guys have on it, but also putting the right people in the room on the champion side. Because I think at the end of the day, in terms of providing accountability towards action and driving it down through an organization, I think is important. And assigning the right person to that table, meeting monthly with Candice and team is very important for the ultimate success of this endeavor. So that's all.
Thanks.
Next up is the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. I think everybody in the room knows we're in the process of updating the 2021 to 2025 Strategic Highway Safety Plan for Maryland. For anybody that might be online, the SHSP is kind of the umbrella document that we used for highway safety programs, whether they're engineering or behavioral or enforcement or emergency medical services. We have a broad plan at the state level, and we also have encouraged the local jurisdictions to develop their own local road plans. We have some of our partners in the room that have helped the locals get those online, and we have a vast majority of our counties now, and several municipalities have developed plans that they're working through. Their plans can be more specific. Their plans can really drill down to what specific problems that they're looking at a local level. Our plans tend to stay broader, so it can fit lots of folks under the umbrella. But just this past week, well, so far this year, our partners with Crash Corps have sent out a survey and interviewed some of the administrators to see what we should make sure we include in next year's plan. There is certainly changing technology. There's certainly changing environments that we have out there that we're working within. And just Tuesday, we had a workshop with over 70 local partners, statewide partners that were able to attend and get some more information about what they would like to see. So we have Janet Bayhuth with Crash Corps to talk a little bit about what she's learned so far that we might see in the next version of the SHSP.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So you had mentioned interviewing several stakeholders, and a lot of those interviews had a recurring theme, which was collaboration. Everyone talked about the collaboration, and this was the epitome of collaboration on Tuesday when we had 70-plus traffic safety professionals and advocates and stakeholders with us from multiple disciplines, every discipline that you can think of, coming together really to discuss what are our future steps. So in the past 5 years, in 2020 when we had another workshop, unfortunately that was online for COVID reasons, but to get together in the same room was really great to have just that collaboration at its best. So what we discussed was the discussion and consensus on some action steps, and these are the actual tasks that these safety advocates or agencies or stakeholders plan to do over the next 5 years. So we showed a lot of progress made in that, a lot of new ideas, technology, innovation, some old ideas that are working, and we'll push forward still with them. We also had discussion and consensus excuse me, on SHSP's performance measures. So as we all know, in 2019, we adopted Vision Zero with the goal of zero vehicle-related fatalities and serious injuries by 2030. It's everybody's vision. There are also requirements that the SHSP has to adhere to, which also require realistic goals. So there's a lot of discussion about that and how exactly we are going to keep all of those forefront and in mind when we push forward with this new plan. So if you go to the next slide for me.
Before you hop to the next one, in February, since our last SHSP meeting, Janet facilitated a statewide meeting. So we had local, in the 4 regions of the state over on the Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland, Central Maryland, and Western Maryland. One had to be online because of weather concerns, but the other 3 we had in person. We invited the local community as much as we could to get out there so we could get their feedback into what they would like to see in an SHSP. We got good feedback from all of the jurisdictions, but we will give special kudos to Western Maryland. The folks out in Cumberland packed a room for us. A lot of it was related to EMS, but that was fine because that's a perspective we don't often get. So we got some very good feedback from that. In fact, we have some grant applications for the Highway Safety Office for next year because of those meetings and the things that they said that they needed that we can probably help provide as we go into the next year. So we were able to accomplish that, and kudos to everybody that participated in those.
Yeah, I think it's really noteworthy because we haven't really engaged the general public in that way before as we're developing the SHSP. Partners certainly, we've always wanted to make sure we heard from them, but I really appreciate that we engaged the general public and got a lot of good feedback, and I think that'll only grow as we continue that engagement process. I know MHSO is out a lot in the communities and trying to really build those partnerships because at the end of the day, that's where it happens, and so we need to make sure that we're in line with where the public is.
And getting feedback from those communities is important for the US DOT safety vision and for both NHTSA and for Federal Highway to make sure that we're getting feedback with what folks are seeing in their communities that they would like to see us do at the state level.
Yeah, those meetings were excellent to see the quote-unquote outsiders' point of view too. I mean, they are the insiders, of course, because they are living here and working here too. But to see it from somebody's perspective who doesn't think about what we think about every day, it made me understand that we are all on the same path, going in the same direction. So it's really good. So some topics, summary topics of what we just came up with or were talking about at the workshop. As you can see, we separated into 4 breakout sessions. The first was occupant protection and distracted driving. And one of the big topics were automated enforcement for both seatbelts and distracted driving, cell phone use in particular. If there's a way to just make it an automated enforcement that would help drive down the use or the non-use if we're talking about seatbelts. There are a lot of things surrounding that, but it was a huge topic of discussion. Hopefully to get better distracted driving data, because it's a problem that we don't totally understand for many, many reasons. If we were able to get distracted driving data as solid as possible, that would help with a lot of efforts, policy enforcement, outreach, everything. Also, a big topic was funding for interpreters at child protection CPS events, so child restraint events. There's a lot of communication that can't happen unless there's an understanding between the people trying to teach or trying to understand. So interpreters was a big ask. In the impaired session, it was a 42% refusal rate came up. This is what we're talking about here is 42% of the people who are pulled over for an impairment are refusing to have the test done. So at that point, there is too much unknown. We don't know what we don't know about impaired driving. There's got to be a way to hone in on that and change that so we know exactly what that problem is. Also, interlock effectiveness study is needed. We haven't really been able to take a look at what the interlock's doing for impaired driving. Is it helping in any way? Doing a study, an effectiveness study can help us determine if there are any tweaks that need to be made. So an effectiveness study would be great. Head bike, lots of discussion about other social media avenues. So YouTube for kids is great because this is where we're hearing a lot of the attention for the young kids, for the young people, as they're starting to learn how to be multimodal and putting the message where they are is a great idea, I think. Also, QR codes on infrastructure to lead people to a how-to video. There's plenty of interesting intersections out there that people just might not understand when they first approach it. So a QR code with a little video explaining this is where you are, this is what this whole system is, and just to explain it so it's more effective. And then also working with enforcement to develop training on best practices for ped bike safety. A lot of times enforcement is focused on vehicle-related incidents or prevention or enforcement. And of course, we know that ped bike is a huge concern in Maryland, so we want to also help law enforcement understand that a little bit better. And then in speed, there's general support for expanding the speed cameras. We heard that already today, beyond just work zones and schools. And also support for law enforcement to increase speed enforcement. Since COVID, of course, speed has become an interesting topic for many reasons. Law enforcement may or may not be enforcing speed, and there's just a lot of people who think speed is a fun thing out there. So cracking down on these will certainly help drive down serious injury and fatality. And then the final one there is needing access to automated enforcement data to better understand that problem. So as we all know, the SHSP is certainly data-driven, and when your hands are tied or your eyes are blind to exactly what the problem is, it makes it a little bit difficult to really pinpoint where to go and how to do it. So again, getting access to the data that we would need. Also a broad topic amongst all 4 sessions was legislative awareness. This is to help legislation people outside of our immediate circle here to understand the safety needs of Maryland and the limits of some of the actions that are taken by the legislation. So basically putting us all on the same page, level setting, making sure that we all understand where each of us needs to go. So that was a broad topic amongst all sessions. So just to wrap that up, I think it was and many people think it was a great idea, a great day. It was a lot of collaboration. I got a lot of good feedback from everybody that I spoke to, and definitely thanks to all of the MHSO crew. You guys were huge in making it a success, so thank you for your help and your guidance, and we will move on from there. We are wrapping up, we'll be pulling together everything that we took from the workshop, and then begin more of the writing part of this development process. So stay tuned, you will hear more soon.
Thanks, Janet. The timeline for having the SHSP ready and to Federal Highway for their review is later this fall. So probably by the time we get to our last Vision Zero meeting of the year, which I believe is November, we will have a draft of the SHSP for folks to review. So,
yeah.
Sounds like a really successful event. Two questions, one comment and a question. Speed management, having gone through the session and seeing all the local safety bills make it through, and thinking about how we can be on the front foot from a coherent speed management policy, local to state, I think is an important one to think through in the draft of the plan. So I was happy to see that there. Was there much discussion about the built environment at the workshop, or is there kind of a leading movement within the plan on the built environment being a factor for this effort as well? Because I think, we're doing good work on policy and PSAP, and I think it's an integral component of ultimate.
Most of that might have come up in the pedestrian bicycle.
Yeah, and there was discussion about complete streets and at the education. That was kind of where that QR code came. That idea was generated actually out of a gentleman in State Highway Administration. So we were trying to think, how do we educate on that? And, you think of a pedestrian hybrid beacon. There was a local jurisdiction that actually removed one because there was a lot of confusion on how it was used. So we were discussing, how do we get that education out? So that was one of the innovative thoughts, like, well, if we just do like a 30-second video, you can do a QR code, quick snap, okay, this is how it's used. It's not, social media, and then you get to that place an hour later and you forget what you're doing, or days later, weeks later. So looking at those different education components, and then as Candice alluded to, the education beyond just those who are implementing it, it's the road users, the road enforcers. Like, there's a lot that needs to be educated on, yes, this is being done, but once that's done, or once it's in the implementation process, how do you, this street has been complete streets, now what do we do for enforcement, and really bringing all partners in. So yes, it's a discussion, and we try at our PBEAT meetings to bring up the complete streets, or at least tease out anything that's infrastructure change, because there's going to be a learning curve, and if we're going to reduce the deaths and fatalities, we need to make sure that education is out there as well.
The speed breakout also, we had discussions on the built environment and its impact on speed. Some of that was also a piece, and how the speed of the built environment, what that looks like in Montgomery County, what we're doing. So yeah, it was also a piece of our breakout.
And the speed thing is obviously of outsized importance. I mean, Candice had, I don't know if you saw it, the 3 clocks, one right after, clock-looking circles, one right after the other. And that was one of the more important parts of our presentation. The higher the speed, the more likely it is you'll die, right?
And I'll add that piece of it is really where MHSO and SHA or we collaborate, and where that piece needs to work together. Sometimes I think we're too siloed, in my opinion. We're too siloed, and sometimes it doesn't happen because one's not talking to the other.
Yep. And sometimes certain elected officials may not agree with our approach to speed management, but at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily mean our work is not warranted there. So I'd just say
one more piece on the built environment side. As part of the strategic highway safety plan, we also have to do a refresh on the vulnerable road users safety assessment, and that's part of the current plan, and that'll be part of the new plan. That actually prioritizes the specific corridors that require improvements where we would continue to focus, like PSAP. PSAP was the first iteration of that. The vulnerable road user assessment that we did that's in the current plan is part of that. That was the evolution of it to meet federal requirements. That'll be updated, and through this process will help us identify the most critical locations where we need improvement. So the built environment will continue to be part of the safety plan, but refreshed for if there's, reflecting the fact that we're going to complete improvements, so new areas will become the new priorities, and so that's a living process and meeting the requirements in the Code of Federal Regulations.
Perfect, thanks.
Yeah, so there was a lot of representation in each of the impaired. I was in the impaired one, and there were, I think, 4 folks from state house, so there was definitely representation for the impaired.
Good.
The new assessment, I'll just add that in our session, there was talk about how that will help with the state and local collaboration, and then that's the huge thing, because as mentioned before, there's the intersecting with the VRU assessment at the local roads too, which is really important, because if we can change the state roads, that's wonderful, but if we're not working with our partners to change those local roads, then we need to make sure that the collaboration stays. So again, back to that big collaboration world, that was what was another big underlying thing.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot internally on the speed side of things. We've had some requests as part of context driven to set policies for what the speed should be based on context. And while that I think we could support, it has to be done hand in glove with locals. If we lower speed limits and they don't, then you can get unanticipated diversions onto roads that aren't designed for people to be trying to get around and navigate around state highways that have lower speeds. These things have to be treated as a network, and so we kind of have had that conversation with Montgomery County, Prince George's County, some of the areas that are asking for that speed policy shift. And so we'll continue that discussion. I think it's an important one to have. Certainly, as Darren said, the faster someone is hit, the more likely they are to die. And that's, if you can get the speeds down, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
On the speed topic, was there a conversation about the delimiter technology that was discussed during session in terms of, on offender vehicles?
Oh,
ISA.
We did. There was some discussion on the ISA. That actually fell in later into, so Virginia has a new law.
DC, yeah.
DC does. And, so I just went through those notes yesterday. The Maryland's, so that is actually something we need to go back and look at, and how feasible it is and where we are with that here in Maryland, because there actually is an action step that is relevant to that, exactly that, but that action step seemed really vague or general or just not relevant anymore. So there was some time spent, so that's one of the tasks. Go back, let's see what's happening in Virginia and DC, whether that is even relevant to Maryland, depending on where we are, and moving forward. But yes, that was definitely discussed. We spent some time on that.
I think that'll be helpful as we go into legislative session next year, because I think it was just kind of scraping the surface of the conversation this year, but hopefully next year with some more time in the interim, we can have some larger policy conversations about that.
It came up that Virginia, we can see how Virginia goes now that they passed theirs for the coming year, and that they started really late in Maryland, so there wasn't an opportunity to provide a whole lot of education and background. See how it works other places, because even in our room there was some skepticism, I think, about. I was surprised at having it passed in Virginia and having it passed in DC, and we had a room full of advocates. How much skepticism there was with how that program would go in Maryland. So
on the flip side, though, in the pedestrian bicycle, it was
very well received. Yeah.
Very well received.
It's interesting to see as overseeing both emphasis areas, kind of this difference.
Yes, walking from session to session was like there were whole different people in every. Yeah, but I mean, it was vastly different people.
That piece of it, while they might not always align with different emphasis areas, it's important to understand too.
And on the ignition airlock piece, interesting to me. So there is a lot of data that we have about when somebody's on ignition interlock. Was there more interest in long-term impact of the interlock, or what was that?
Cliff might address some of that when we talk about his bullets up here, but there is interest in treatment and what happens. What happens? Is how there's a difference in effectiveness. So that ignition interlock doesn't necessarily. I don't want to step on Cliff. Ignition interlock might not address the root of the problem. So you're only.
Well, that's why I wanted to know what.
Yeah.
But we're having those conversations, and I'm sure Cliff will allude to that about how we can further expand our reach there.
Last time we had our emphasis area chairs actually give a full presentation. This time I just asked them for bullets. I told them they have to give a presentation, but I didn't tell them they have to speak. So, sorry, it's a bit of a surprise.
But all right.
You guys are good at it. You gave me the bullets. I didn't make them up.
Expand as needed. So again, Cynthia's break, pedestrian speed program, pedestrian bike speed program. So obviously we know education, huge component, and we have Cheswick the Crab, who was an Ocean City derived campaign, SHA, and it continues to be very prominent in Ocean City. But Cheswick, being such a crab, is making his way over to the other side of the bay and into the mountains even. But we were happily, again, with the support of Administrator Nizer, we were back out for Read Across America Week with Cheswick. We were from shore to mountains, north to south, with our partners locally. This year, I know we had last year in Ocean City, we had officers with us, but this year we increased the number of officers. So one of the jurisdictions, we had Administrator Nizer and 4 officers reading to the children, and then that promoted some discussion afterwards with safety. And of course, if you've ever been around elementary school children, they're not going to keep their thoughts in. They're going to share all of the bad behaviors that they see. They're going to talk about what they should be doing, which is important because if we're going to change the safety culture, it's going to take those very small but loud voices to do so. And not just Read Across America Week, just last week, Cheswick was at Fort Meade talking to those students. And we did, end of March, or beginning of April, we were fortunate enough to have Mr. Cheswick, the father of the gentleman who this crab is named after, come with us. He sat down and read to a class. It was very touching. But then to talk to him afterwards and just his extreme gratefulness on keeping his son's memory alive and just continuing this and making sure that we're reading his book to children to teach them the proper and safe things. So it's really important. And along with that, you can teach them outside of the car, but you can also teach them how to be good passengers. So it was so long a conversation. So I'm glad that we have that kind of statewide now and continue to grow that program. And then next, kind of going with our youth still, we're going a little bit older now. The Washington Area Bicycle Association, WABA, has a grant with our office, and they have been in their second year. They've grown from a couple 4 youth now to 6. And these youth are high school students within Prince George's County. Most of them are seniors, but they have done a lot of work. The biggest thing is they were trained in how to conduct walk audits and how to get the messaging out to create them. They did walk audits in March, and they have more bike stuff coming up for May. They've really been working. They have a town hall coming up where they will bring kids together, and Cliff was able to go with me last year. That all that they put together is very impressive to see these young students. We also, again, working in circles and realizing, talking about that getting out of silos is, Cliff does a lot with Bowie State with the impaired side. So now we've got Bowie State and WABA combined. WABA is also combined with the University of Maryland Smart Growth. So we're really reaching out and finding all of those ways that we can continue to get that education out. But it's very interesting to see the perspective of the high school students and what we see as traffic safety and then what they see as those who are walking. It's kind of disconcerting. They will walk in the sidewalk and have traffic go by really fast, and they're just used to it. So it's very interesting to see that perspective. So I'm glad that we have that partnership. I'm glad that they've reached out to so many partners and continue to form. May is coming up, and with the direction of TSO and the active transportation, we're working with all nodes for Bike to Work Week. When I first started Bike to Work Week, it was, I wouldn't say it was small because it's always been big, but it wasn't as congealed as it is now, and now it is, modes are across this, state highway with MTA and, TSO and MDA, like we're all just converging, and this year it was discussed, like if you don't necessarily have a safe place to bike to, table, educate. So we're excited to be doing that within our offices and, going out to the different partners where we could do, providing that education and information. Speed and pedestrian are separate but often combined. So in our last speed emphasis area team, and we were talking about particularly all of the bills that came out of this session and what kind of needs to be done. Do we need to have more of that state, local, so that we're not introducing 30 different bills and inundating legislation? So what were some of the thoughts? But the speed emphasis area team continues to grow and continues to get louder voices, which is really important. When I first started, it seemed like it was me talking to the wall, and I would hope that people were absorbing things. And now, luckily, as much as I can talk all day long, I don't talk as much in those meetings because we do have a lot of strong voices that are coming out, speaking specifically on those alternative ways. Since we know law enforcement is so inundated with all the other things, what are some of the other avenues that we have? So that was one of the very large things that have come out of the speed emphasis area team, so much that the co-chair and I are looking at putting together some educational components on how we can talk about these things in future upcoming meetings to really just get that information out and why it's important, why we need to discuss it, why we need to have it. And of course, that ultimately will make our multiple codes safer.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll jump in.
You can introduce yourself. I don't think you are.
Cliff Jacobs, Superior Driving Program Manager, Maryland Highway Safety Office. First bullet point, traffic safety resource prosecutor. This, for those that may not be familiar, is a veteran prosecutor that is a subject matter expert on traffic safety. We are moving in the right direction when it comes to identifying a replacement for Jimmy Daggett. Hopefully, have that position filled full-time person. Prior to, I would say, the Memorial Day holiday, working with the University of Baltimore, candidates already lined up and a potential interview is already on the books. That person's main goal is going to be training and continuing to break down silos, working in conjunction with the State Judicial Outreach Liaison, and helping us address some of the issues that we've talked about in this meeting, especially as it comes to that 42% refusal rate. Next up is parole and probation, drunk driving monitoring programs. This is something that is not new per se, but a new initiative to our office. Over the last month, myself as well as Judge Barbara Waxman have went full throttle with developing a good working relationship with the drunk driving monitoring program to see what their needs are. We have something in the making where we want to take a model that's been very successful in Minnesota and craft a DD&P liaison. That would be that person who works in conjunction with the Highway Safety Office and DD&P and the courts to lessen that gap, because what we know, especially here in the state of Maryland, every court at the district court level has what they call an assessor. So when someone is in front of the judicial officer to address an impaired driving charge and the judge has access to the criminal history, they may see behavior that stems from drinking, drugging, or substance use disorder. Well, I can call the case later as a judicial officer, have an individual go downstairs and receive an assessment, come back, what are the outcome of the assessment, and that determines the course of action. But what we want to do is get down to is this person who's the assessor using the correct screening tool for the population that doesn't give a judicial officer skewed information. So one of the things that DDMP has told us is they would like to receive training in using an IDA. For this purpose, it's the Impaired Driving Assessment, which is a NHTSA countermeasure. Just last week, we connected the American Parole and Probation Association with several DDMP agents, and they received a quick tutorial on the IDA tool. First and foremost, they're just waiting on their leadership to get the okay to get the rest of the DDMP agents trained on that tool, because what we're finding is each DDMP agent has an average of 160 impaired driving offenders on their caseload. By having a correct screening tool, this weeds out who truly needs our services and who doesn't, and leads to effective community supervision for a high-risk population. And then next are SJOL, State Judicial Outreach Liaison. The DDMP meeting is one initiative that we had as well. We have to continue to train in these positions. From a TSRP and an SJOL, 95% of their job is training. We're relying on Judge Waxman to be that voice and train judicial officers. We've heard Dr. Kern say it, and we said it today. We don't know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. The same holds true for judicial officers. There's so many nuances to hearing and issuing a ruling on an impaired driving case. We have to get down to the why. What is causing that second, third, and fourth subsequent charge? Is it lack of treatment? Is it co-occurring disorders? And we have to educate our judges from the ground and give them the basics. It's not so much as saying, you're not going to drive, we're going to put the interlock on. Yes, we want that interlock on there, but we want it combined with effective supervision and effective treatment, which is going to take our recidivism rates in the direction that we want them to go. So in a nutshell, those are the three key topics right now that are on the plate when it comes to impaired driving. And the two key roles, TSRP and SJOL, are going to drive a lot of what we do. We've already broken down silos. Judge Waxman just last fall took a tour of the MSP Forensic Toxicology Lab. What we want to do is get judges to come take that tour as well. And we want to start by focusing on our largest localities, Baltimore City and Prince George's County, and then let the gospel speak for itself, because judges listen to judges. Talk to your other counterparts throughout the state and get them trained.
And just in support of what Cliff's doing, we've put together internally within the MBA, which is why I was interested in the ignition interlock interest, kind of similar to what we're going to do next in terms of the infrastructure review, but impaired driving crash review. So with Candace being our safety data analyst now, we really are trying to figure out, the whole history of somebody's driving record, when impairment occurs, the effectiveness of ignition interlock, like are they on it 4 times and it's just not seeming to make a difference? What are the what violations do they have even when they're on ignition interlock? And I think we're going to come out with some, maybe next time we can update the team, some recommendations on policy changes to the program that we can do administratively to hopefully make that more effective, because I think what we recognize is exactly what Cliff's saying, that we are a part of the larger puzzle solution for most folks who have true impairment challenges that they struggle with in all aspects of their life. So how can MBA be a more active participant in that, and especially looking at our problem driving courts that we have statewide that I know MHSO has supported for years, but can MBA play a more active role in that conversation? Because again, they don't know what they don't know. So how can we support the efforts that are happening? So I'm really excited about kind of taking it to the next level. We've always been really proud of the program because we do actively monitor folks, so we provide that direct feedback, but I think maybe there's some additional work that we can do there now that we're really digging into the data in the way we've been able to do.
Mark? All right, thanks, Tim. So as far as distracted driving and occupant protection goes, the Highway Safety Office, our office, we were awarded a $100,000 grant from the Governor's Highway Safety Association and General Motors to run a Local Heroes program. So we've been working on that program, and this program has been done in other parts of the country before. So it's normally law enforcement or police officers who do these videos. So we haven't had the best comments on some of our social media posts with some of the law enforcement. So we're trying to use first responders. We're using firefighters, EMTs, and doctors and nurses in these local hero spots. So we did that filming. We focused that area on the Eastern Shore. So these videos are going to be like public service announcements that will be focused towards the Eastern Shore. So we also have some of that money directed towards media, so we could geo-target these messages to make sure the communities are receiving those messages for distracted driving and the ramifications of distracted driving. We were also able to throw a little plug of wearing seatbelts in those videos, so they turned out pretty good. We got the draft, so I think they look pretty good. So they should be coming out soon. This project had to be complete by June 30th, so we're on track to finish the project in that time frame. Speaking about seatbelts, Click of the Ticket is going to happen June the 2nd. No.
The observations.
The observations start June the 2nd to June 16th. However, the Click of the Ticket campaign will start May 12th to June the 1st. So that'll be a national campaign where you'll see a bunch of Click of the Ticket messaging out there. So we'll have those observations out, like Tim said, that we'll have observers on the street counting to see how many front seat passengers have on their seatbelt, drivers and passengers have on their seatbelt. So any seatbelt information our partners can get out. We encourage as many people to buckle up as possible during this time of year. Right now, our current rate is 90.6. So of course, we want that to be a little higher. So we'll be out doing the observations for that data soon. We also recently just wrapped up a car seat project. We did this a couple years ago. This was our second round where we provided 37 law enforcement agencies with 3-in-1 car seats. So all of the agencies were able to come to the MVA and pick those up. And we were able to provide good information, education to go along with those seats to the officers that picked them up. So that was a really good project. And live action commercials. As many of you know, our Be the Driver campaign, we've used cartoon characters for some of the promotion and outreach that we've done with that. So we are now transitioning those cartoon characters to live actors. So this is our first spot, Distracted Driving. This was actually a fun project to work on. We shot the commercial, and we're just trying to highlight we know that using cell phones is a big problem with distracted driving, but there are also other aspects of distracted driving, and FaceTime and other things. So we really tried to highlight those in this video that you're about to see.
And this is really something that came in the Lieutenant Governor's leadership of the Works and Safety Committee, wanting to, making sure that we're driving home the real life impact. The cartoons were done around COVID, where obviously we couldn't get everybody in a room to shoot, but now putting real faces on there, and hopefully it drives home the message that these are real people whose lives are impacted forever, whether it's fatality or whether it's a serious injury.
Are you driving or am I?
Either way, first things first.
Right. All right, everybody out.
Leave your distractions behind.
Yeah, the game is at 1. I'll make it there on time.
Be the focused driver. Good plan.
Now we can go.
Driving while distracted is dangerous for you, your passengers, and other motorists. Visit zerodeathsmd.gov and be the driver who saves lives.
So going forward, all the videos we like this live action. Distracted was our first one, and trying to, make it a little funny, but also just catch the attention of these are things that probably many people do every day while they're in the vehicle, and a reminder that they should not be doing that. So the creative team for getting that done.
And next up will be Barrett.
That's a question.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, I know you said the PSAs and everything are focused on the Eastern Shore. Will they be available though for us to use in other regions of the state and everything?
No.
Not necessarily for you to buy the media to put them out there, but like if we post them on social media.
I mean, we'll have the videos in our office.
Not as part
It's really
of, not
the
as part of
local
the,
heroes
not
that-
as part of the grant project.
Right, no, I
Yes.
just meant to benefit from the.
The local heroes are focused on the Eastern Shore, and so the idea was, in many of those communities, the doctors and the EMT leaders and, folks in the community are very well known, smaller areas, right? And so with the local heroes, that's how they've, as you know, found that to be really effective by seeing those faces that they're familiar with. But we have talked about using other prominent folks in the community, even in the Baltimore area, we talked about Dr. Scalia or somebody from shock trauma, right? And the following they have saying these important messages. So
we will post them so they can be used by other folks, but we chose the Eastern Shore because we had an evaluation component for GHSA and GM, and it's easier to filter out the noise on the shore than it would be in the Baltimore or the DC metropolitan areas, because then we wouldn't really know if it was getting quite the spread that we would like it to get.
No, it just sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. More to come.
Well, and we have to let Region 3 have something that they would like us to do every once in a while. So they've been asking us for years to do local heroes. So.
Even though we started it.
Yeah, even though we originally did it a long time ago, and they said we moved on, then we had to come back.
Tidal Health, the hospital element as well. They asked for the video so they can put the full video out that shows all their doctors and nurses. So I think they'll also be putting it out organically. Once we're done with it, they'll be putting the video out on their website and social media featuring their. Great.
Roads. So this is part of the requirement under the legislation for the Vision Zero meeting, is to review the fatality infrastructure reviews that were completed by SHA. We are generally going in date order, so we will continue to do these for each Vision Zero meeting, and we will probably pick up the pace a little bit just so we can kind of maintain with, unfortunately, the pace that we see on the road.
Thank you, Tim. So I'm Terry Seuss with the State Highway Administration. Cedric Ward is out of the office this week, so I will be covering reviews. We have 9 reviews that we'll cover today. All of them down. There we go. All of them are in our more suburban areas, so zone C or D. These crashes occurred in our districts 3, 5, and 7. So that's Prince George's, Montgomery County, Anne Arundel County, Charles, Calvert, I believe, and Howard County as well. And this a theme that just occurred, as Tim mentioned, these were chosen by date. But a theme here is that they were all during dark or twilight conditions. 4 of the crashes were in early morning, and 5 shortly after dusk. So our first, trying to do 2 machines. All right, our first review is from May 8th. Is in the early morning hours in Montgomery County, Maryland 28 at Maryland 115. Suburban, the contact zone is suburban or zone D. For this crash, the pedestrian was a driver, and then there was a property damage collision. His vehicle was straddling the raised concrete median on Maryland 115, just north of the intersection. The pedestrian, he left his vehicle, was standing next to his vehicle in the left turn lane of southbound Moncaster Mill Road when he was struck by another vehicle. So the infrastructure portion of this, recently the traffic signal had been reconstructed, and a new pedestrian crossing was added on the north leg of Maryland 115. However, review of the crash conditions and the road conditions didn't find that they were a contributing factor to this event. Any questions or comment on this review? All right. Our next review is from July 27th, just about 9 p.m. Again, Montgomery County. Maryland 193, University Boulevard, just west of Langley Drive. The context zone here is Suburban Activity Center, or Zone C. In this, the pedestrian was crossing the eastbound lanes of University Boulevard when they were struck by a vehicle. So in this, the crosswalk at Langley Drive and 193 is an unsignalized crossing today, and we found that the required pedestrian, or the required sign for stop here for pedestrian sign for the eastbound leg was not installed. So the infrastructure improvements we can do here, we're installing the sign now, and State Highway will also install a fully controlled pedestrian crossing at this intersection to improve pedestrian safety.
Is the installation of the signs, is that standard when you install the crosswalk, or what is it?
It is required by law, and I don't know if that was struck at one point and then it was missing, but it has been installed now.
Okay.
Pin in that, is that where the crossing was?
Correct. So I think they were a little bit north of the intersection. However, if we think we have an improved intersection crossing, that will hopefully draw pedestrians more towards that.
Sites have a big crash history involving pedestrians.
Do you happen to know that?
No, we don't have a, like.
Okay.
As there's new development in areas, and then I know near me there's a new apartment complex development, and you're seeing a lot more pedestrian crossing in areas that aren't traditionally. Exactly. Sorry.
Conversations about that.
Oh, did you? Because I've seen very dangerous interactions with pedestrians and vehicles, let's just say. And so I'm just wondering the proactive piece of it. I appreciate that it happened after the crash, but I'd like to see it happen before.
Yeah, as far as developer projects go, we say repeatedly that all development is local. Joe and I have actually been working quite extensively with Jonathan, wherever he wasn't here, but to try to see if we can move the needle on that issue. We do require in certain instances for developers to install features in compliance with police streets, things that we would do. But certainly, depending on the specific county ordinances and how much it's desired to push for that in the development, it does impact what types of features we see installed by the developer. It is unfortunate that there are counties that we have repeat issues where certain developers will build something, we will ask for safety features to be installed. The counties will push back on us to not require that in the development in order to be pro-growth. And then immediately after the developer's done, we get the CTP request to build what we had asked the developer to do. It is something we need to, as a state, take better leadership on, and we're working on a path to figure out how to get there. But certainly, we've heard the governor talk a lot about the importance of economic development in Maryland, how that impacts so much of the tax revenue and base of what we need to do. So we got to do that in a balanced and measured way. We talked earlier about being balanced and measured between congestion goals and safety goals, and there's a lot of areas where we need to walk and chew gum, but this is one that we've been trying to thread the needle and work really hard to figure out, can we establish minimum standards on state highway? Most of the timeframes in development are also an issue. I've spent a lot of effort on developing tracking systems at State Highway to make sure we're processing development in a timely fashion. We do that. However, where we get into issues is when we have to negotiate with the developers for these kinds of improvements. If they don't want to do them, we feel like that's the right safety feature. That can really stretch out the timeline. So setting some consistent business rules for developers would help us to provide predictability for them in moving developments forward. Time is money. We hope that everybody can see that as a value, while also helping to make sure that we represent the communities really well that we're serving and get them the safety features to prevent deaths in Maryland.
I mean, if there's, I don't know, it's a strange way of looking at it, but there's just something we can do as a developer community to educate them on the statistics of fatalities and that there's real life implications for making, I know money is going to drive decisions. I certainly appreciate that, but at least maybe we could do something from an education standpoint. I don't know that that's a group that we've reached out to. I mean, certainly a lot of engineering community outreach, but I don't know from the development side of it. Maybe that's a new partner as we think about businesses and others that we engage in. I understand the economic development.
Yeah, there's housing.
If there's something we can do.
Associations and others. I think that that kind of outreach is definitely excellent. I don't, like you said, at the end of the day, their core purpose is to garner trips to their businesses. So a lot of times we are focused on safety features to promote connectivity, to get foot traffic and support use of their amenities, to kind of sell them on the benefits from a bottom line. But we try everything. Believe me, in the discussions with developers, we push the safety and operations discussion a lot. I would welcome anyone who wants to sit in on one of those negotiations. It is not easy. We deal with 23 counties that each have their own ordinances, and some of them have no ordinances at all. So it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to key on, because I think there's many counties that probably do a lot of that. From experience, like there's a lot of discussion with developers about what can and should be done. They were in on kind of our complete streets development in Howard County, so there's a lot of that. It could be more, I think, but it's probably very much varied between the jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to your point in terms of engagement, though, you know, one of the streams of work we need to do an update to the access manual and the traffic impact studies, regardless, for complete streets implementation from a policy perspective. But to get it right, we probably need some legislative fixes as well. So we're going to have to do some engagement with the community, both, you know, advocates, proponents of kind of safety, but then also the development community. And there's, you know, different areas that do it better. Howard County and Montgomery County are two that are generally pretty proactive from we expect that this is going to be part of the entitlement process, but it's not everybody. And I think that that's where we want to get to. And I think how we get there and do it with an end game positive result, I think is really it. But your point is well taken, right? If we're chasing development, it's always going to be hard to get ahead of this. I think, you know, you guys are aware of that. We're aware of that. I think it's just a question of how we get there. So that is a core area of focus. Anyway. Yeah. And so we'd certainly update this table, I think, in the coming months on the effort on that front.
Good planning, just in general, is holistic. It's corridor focused. It's not individual frontage focused. Currently, most of the counties that we deal with are frontage focused, where you have to mitigate what's in front of you. And that really, you know, as a Wawa goes in, and then a block later, a Royal Farm goes in, and a McDonald's goes in, all these things get added over time. You're left with really disjointed developments and features that then we get the request to, even if the developer did the right thing, well, what about the connection between them? And so where we really would like is to have good statewide planning. And we do, like Bruce's point, there are some counties that get this right. There are counties that have developer fees where they see, hey, we've done 5 developments in this corridor and it's just not working anymore. We're going to use this fee and work to do an improvement project that fixes the whole network through here. And that's great. That leads to better outcomes for that community. But there are a lot that are not doing things like that, that leads to negative outcomes and CTP project requests and developers who are frustrated that we're asking for things. And so it's a complex issue that you know, legislation, lots of different things need to happen. But we're pounding away at it, and hopefully going to, you know, didn't expect to talk about that at this.
Sorry, I didn't dive into the whole hornet's nest.
To do this the right way, I think we got to get that side of the house right too.
Next location, from July 9th, 3:30 in the morning, Prince George's County. This is southbound Maryland 5 Branch Avenue, which is actually an access-controlled expressway. Pedestrian was walking in the southbound direction in lane 3, was struck by a vehicle traveling in the same direction. A review of the crash and the circumstances around that. We found pedestrians are prohibited from walking on this type of roadway, again, high-speed controlled access expressway. So we found that the roadway infrastructure was not a contributing factor.
You know why they were there?
Can't tell what's around the area.
I didn't know, like, if it was the other one, like their car broken down or something. Further upstream.
There's a lot of access controlled highways where it becomes an enforcement issue.
Yeah.
People use it, walk on it, and unfortunately, it's like, why do people text and drive? Why do they drink and drive it?
Right.
There's a lot of, unfortunately, these types of highways are not designed, they're actually specifically designed not to anticipate pedestrians. And so, it's an enforcement issue.
I saw a pedestrian on I-95 just the other day, and I was shocked, so. And what, yeah.
Can I throw a wrench in there?
Maybe.
I often wonder, my brain first goes to, well, what connection do they need? Like, what is missing? And a lot of times, there is a connection, they're just not using it. But for long-term planning, and now that we're developing like a pipeline for these types of projects, like Complete Streets projects, sometimes helpful to see this kind of data to know, like, for the future, where some needs would be. So.
Yeah, I think the trail network plan, trying to provide connectivity, that certainly is a part of this. You'll see controlled access highways like the Inter-County Connector, where there is a nearby adjacent trail that allows for connectivity. We certainly, I-95 doesn't have that, but there are parallel routes in some instances. Like, you can be on areas of 40, you can't be on I-95. It really is circumstantial. It depends. There's a lot of need for connectivity improvements for ADA, just even areas where we already have sidewalk, but they need to be upgraded. There's connectivity, missing links. There's a lot of that need statewide. This is possibly one location. I candidly am not sure.
Okay. Also, we don't know what the connection is, but there's no nearby generators based on what we're able to see here. So.
And you probably don't see somebody walking there regularly. So, and then that's what happens a lot with these fatalities. They're one-offs. The circumstances aligned where the pedestrian was there, the vehicle was there, for whatever reason the vehicle, struck the pedestrian, but then it may never happen. There may never be a pedestrian there again for 2 or 3 or 4 years because there's nothing in common. But like when they do the site reviews, and we did one in Howard County, a whole bunch of people were walking by, not using the sidewalk. And so at one point, it's finally said, okay, hey guys, why aren't you using the sidewalk? And that's where you get the interesting anecdotes. It's all about perception, about what they see, and they didn't like it. They didn't like the way it went. They didn't like the path it took. They thought it was safer to be at where they were. So it's real interesting to get just to stop. But like in a situation like this, you can't, because there's not going to be another person there that you can say, hey, why are you here? And you shouldn't be there. So it's harder to identify these. Yeah. It goes along with years ago we had the one where it said the pedestrian fatalities occur where drivers don't expect them to be, and this is one of those spots.
Our next location was May 27th, 5:40 in the morning, Charles County. This is Maryland 5, Leonardtown Road. It is a suburban contact zone. The pedestrian was walking south in lane 1 of Route 5, and a vehicle was traveling in the same lane in the northbound direction when the crash occurred. So they Maryland 5 in this area, again, suburban area of Charles County, is not currently designed as a walkable zone. Pedestrian, the law requires pedestrian yield when entering the roadway. A review of the infrastructure was not necessarily a contributing factor in this crash. However, we will continue to monitor this area. Questions or comments on this one?
Just again, pointing out the 5:40 a.m., so time of day.
Was there lighting along here?
I do not believe there is roadway lighting along this
Because
area.
you weren't expecting it closed off to pedestrians. I was there. That makes sense. Okay. I was just thinking, because you pointed out it's the dark time. Yeah.
Correct. And lighting can be a little bit of a concern either way, right? So neighbors along the roadway don't necessarily want a roadway to be lit all the time. So there, it's a balance, I will say.
Yeah, we typically concentrate lighting around intersections where there'll be potential conflicts. In routes, we have a lighting policy that kind of guides where to put lighting. Interstates, for example, will often have lighting even along the corridor, whereas a suburban area like this typically.
Or if there's, a more urban area where there's transit stops and we're expecting more pedestrians in the area, then we would potentially have lighting in those corridors. Our next location, May 26th, 9:30 at night. Again, Charles County. This is Maryland 228 Berry Road at Briarwood Drive. The pedestrian was on foot. They were crossing. They were crossing from the westbound side of Maryland 28 to the, I guess there's a Shell gas station on the other side. The vehicle was traveling eastbound on 228 in lane 2 when the pedestrian was struck. Given the context of the zone, again, Charles County, 9:30 at night, not necessarily expecting high pedestrian volumes in this area. SHA did not recommend any infrastructure improvements at this location. However, we will continue to monitor.
Yeah, good to hear the monitoring thing, because these are, I mean, just to state the obvious, I don't know what the speed limit is here, but this is not limited access high speed, right? You have adjacent land uses that have easy access to this, so which means you're likely to have more interactions than you would in a limited access high speed environment.
And there's a destination, a gas station, so we're not a gas up the road.
Yeah.
We've had other areas like US 1, Dr. Patel and Rowanberry, where there's like a McDonald's on the other side, and folks will sprint across, and we had 2 fatals there, and so we've done an intersection improvement project. I think it's about trip generation, how many pedestrians are there, what's the likelihood. Unfortunately, this case happened here.
Next location, June 4th, again about 9:30 p.m., Calvert County. This is Maryland 260 Chesapeake Beach Road. The crash occurred about 250 feet east of Paris Pines Court. The vehicle was traveling east in lane 2 of Maryland 260. When the pedestrian was struck, police report indicated the pedestrian was attempting to cross at a non-intersection location, again, just east of the Paris Pines Court. Again, about 9:30 p.m., the infrastructure review, we will continue to monitor this location, but we did not recommend any upgrades to address this crash. From April 29th, approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, Howard County, this is US 1. The crash occurred about 350 feet south of the Patuxent Range Road. This is a suburban zone D in this location. Vehicle was traveling south on US 1. Pedestrian was crossing the west side of the roadway to the east side when the crash occurred. This area is just south of the planned improvements along US 1, and this area will be further considered for lighting and sidewalk improvements. Although working closely with Howard County, again, this is south of the current limits of the project, of the planned project, so this will be looked at for future improvements.
Was Howard County involved in this infrastructure review since this was a crossroad for the local road? Did they come out and join the state highway district team?
I don't know that answer.
I'm guessing that you'll expect more pedestrian activity there, that's why we're looking at lighting there?
US 1 is to maybe add, is a difficult corridor for us. It's was very industrial area. It is transitioning. There are more housing developments, but there are a lot of trucking facilities or places that trucks need to access. We do have a lot of nighttime pedestrian crashes in this corridor, so yes, that's why we're looking at sidewalk and lighting improvements.
Yeah, this stretch is in our vulnerable road user safety assessment. It's one of the corridors that's listed.
Not going to help me out on that.
Not a toll road.
I can see that the county wouldn't have been right there since it's that, step back.
And the crash occurred on US 1.
Yeah.
South of the intersection, so.
I was focused on other things in April 24.
All right. I think this is our last one. So we added this one. I don't think it was originally on your list, Tim. So this one, I don't know, there seemed to be a glitch in our notification time frame, and this was not posted to our website within the 6 months that is required. However, we wanted to present it here today because the review was done. We just didn't post it. So there, again, that was just an oversight in our alert. But so from June of 2024, again, just after 9 p.m., Prince George's County, this is Maryland 193 at Chantilly Lane. So the vehicle was traveling westbound on Enterprise Road when the other vehicle was traveling eastbound on Enterprise Road. For reasons still under investigation, the pedestrian appears to have been in the middle of the roadway and was involved in a collision with the left side of one of the vehicles. The impact on the vehicle caused the pedestrian to be projected into the eastbound lane of Enterprise Road, where they were struck by the second vehicle. There was a new traffic signal installed at Maryland 193 and Chantilly Lane just about a month after that crash. That was already a planned improvement. So at this time, we are not recommending any further infrastructure improvements at this location. However, we will continue to monitor if lighting needs to be added, and other segments or other on this portion. So it appears the again, pedestrian was crossing the road, impacted one of the vehicles, was then projected into the other lane and was struck.
Being that all of these were suburban areas, people are expected to live there. Are there parameters for like pedestrian signage in these areas? Just watch out, even with the road that's not supposed to have them on there. They're all near like entrances to developments and things like that. So just like a deer, you don't expect them to run out, but they live there. So is there something for that?
Actually, it's funny, we just did at the SMART Symposium at Morgan, there was a little bit of a joke that you could tag deer, and there's a new way to actually see if they're going to run into the roadway, but that's a whole other thing. And they talked about new devices that pedestrians will be able to carry and use V2X to communicate with cars if they're about to be involved in a conflict. So maybe that'll be there in the future, even with deer. But to your question, yes, we do have signing on routes that are controlled highways. We do have signs that say, pedestrian. It has a laundry list of what's prohibited. You know the MUTCD better than I. Do you know specifically the business rules on when, pedestrians prohibited signing is being put up on our roads?
I don't think that was
Yeah, no, it wasn't for the pedestrians, because people are going to disobey that no matter what. But for cars, like pedestrian or development nearby.
Pedestrian crossing or pedestrian expected sign.
Yeah, like even if there's no crossing, just be alert. People live here.
Like deaf child.
Yeah,
play
like
or
that.
something, but like the whole area is here.
Yes.
I haven't seen a sign that kind of warns about expect pedestrians that aren't like where they're supposed to be. I haven't seen.
Places like the beach where it'll say heavy pedestrian activity, but it's places like Ocean City or Rehoboth or where people are coming from the beach going back to the. I'll see signs like that in areas like that, maybe not specifically Ocean City, but not in circumstances like this where there's a whole bunch of people. It's like be lookout for everybody, but when you're expecting ones and twos, you don't typically see those.
We don't know if they're ones and twos. We just know ones and twos are starting to kill. We don't know.
Right. Well, we don't know if because when there's a lot, it's easier to tell. When they do it a few at a time, that's harder to get a grasp on.
Is that something? I mean, we can look into that to see if there's any national practices or. I don't think I've seen that in the MUTCD, but.
I don't think I see it on the MUTCD, but as like Dr. Khan mentioned, it's like at this level we are not have a very solid idea how many pedestrians on the crash happened location as the volume wise. We need a further investigation on how many pedestrians actually, even though it's not showing on the fresh report, maybe some location probably have more than we think.
Yeah, like areas.
Some is just one or two pedestrian, but unfortunately there was a crash involved. So.
But it's also good, obviously, to monitor the context, right? And this is where we have so we have suburban areas and then we have suburban activity centers. Some areas are probably transitioning land use wise into an area where you see more activity, and therefore you need to actually put more countermeasures in place.
Yeah, so like we need to further investigate whether the signs are available or not, but allowed to use, but like we need to have some kind of how like that might be effective, like the location driver doesn't expect a pedestrian, but actually there's a lot of pedestrians that like it might be effective, but like
especially Southern Maryland, like a growing community, to your point earlier.
Yeah, the context changes, right? Yeah.
It's not yet ready for treatment, but maybe a sign is an indication for the driver that conditions are changing.
Terry, just a quick question. Does this review board just do roadway circumstances, or do they do other factors like driver, pedestrian, and
So this is an infrastructure review, so we're only looking at the infrastructure portion. But we do use the police report and other information to help, understand the circumstances.
Well, we did these reviews, and I live in Howard County, so I sat in on them, and of the 8 reviews that we did, there was impairment in some level, either the driver or the pedestrian, 7 of them. And there were some circumstances that were just deemed almost impossible because somebody was walking in a thunderstorm in a travel lane. This one in particular case, she was like a 0.3. She was really, really inebriated. And the car literally had no way to see her. So, I mean, I think that the roadway conditions are obviously important, but then there are other factors where people are making decisions that they may not make.
We see that in Prince County a lot, the Naylor Road intersection, Suitland.
So we are starting to look a little bit at that. When we send the cases over for the infrastructure review, we are taking a look more in depth at the crash circumstances, what was on the report, and what we can find with the additional data resources we have. But I'm not sure where these cases all are in a court. So right now, it's internal discussions that we have those with, because we don't know everything obviously is discoverable, but we're not including those as part of this, so there's no.
Similar legislation in Howard County, it's the same thing, they're closed door safety team meetings.
Yeah.
If it's still going through the court, because then law enforcement will.
And we're not checking those. We're not checking to see where they are in the court process, if they even went to court or adjudicated.
So similarly to our prior conversation, if a driving record is useful of the driver to pull, right, for context, not necessarily of that adjudication if it hasn't been complete, but of prior driving behavior, that's something that we can provide. Because I know we had the conversation with the chair about the fact that it is an infrastructure review, but he seemed very open to saying we understand there are other contexts, and so it's not always infrastructure, because we raise the driver behavior and the conditions that are at play oftentimes. So I think it's okay for us to go beyond just the pure infrastructure and look at other factors. And I think there is an awareness of the leadership of the General Assembly that those are actually playing into many of these as well.
Going to this conversation and bringing it back to what we were talking about earlier, like we all want to be on the proactive front foot of mitigating this from happening. I think when and how we get ahead of it, but I don't want to lose sight of the tough challenges we have ahead of us, whether it be ignition, speed, policies that we need to change, or some of our access manuals and traffic impact studies. Like, we need the collective team, and I say collective team, this room, but also our local partners stepping up and getting on board with us, as well as the development community, because I think at the end of the day, development's going to go. We want our population is growing, right? Housing, we need more housing. Where that goes and how we proactively respond to it together is important to mitigate this type of activity from happening. We have more work to do, of course, on our side. But I think that's one item that I'd just love to bring to this group at some juncture when we're ready.
Yeah, I'd just add to that during this last session, there was a lot of discussion around who's at fault for these types of fatal crashes with pedestrians. And we tried to articulate the point that with these fatal infrastructure reviews, we're really looking at it through the lens of
How do we have good practices on our side where we can to avoid conflicts with pedestrians? But a fundamental principle of the safe system approach is that humans make mistakes. Drivers make mistakes, pedestrians make mistakes. This process we're doing, it's not about talking about who's at fault for the mistake or any of that. If we can get people to slow down, they're less likely to die. If we can separate pedestrians from traffic, they're less likely to die. That's what we're trying to do here. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be intoxicated pedestrians, drivers who are intoxicated. All those things are there, but we're really just looking at this through the lens of like, what could we do to make our state better? And I think that it's hard in the messaging because I think there's like this desire to like minimize the safety management from speed management, to minimize the infrastructure and all of that. But that's where our focus is going to be, because we're not going to stop people from drinking. We're not going to stop people from texting. We're not going to, like that, we're going to try. We're going to keep educating, but they're inevitably, like we talked about, these are onesie twosies. They're not this huge number of individuals, but if we're going to get to zero, we got to use all the tools in the tool belt.
I agree, and that's why I was just saying there may be things that we find from these reviews that are illustrative to us, and that's why the driving record may be useful in having that larger kind of I know from SHA's perspective, maybe there is a more comprehensive review that should be done, right? So, for instance, the driver had multiple speeding violations in the past. Yes, maybe the pedestrian was in an area not expected, but is there something we should be looking at from that standpoint, just like we're doing with the impaired driving crashes? So I put that out there as another maybe piece of the puzzle, not what your sole focus is, but we're really trying to look at driving records as an illustrative futuristic behavior lens, and say, is there something we can do to better inform, educate, modify behavior going forward?
Christy, to add to that just a little bit, years ago, we were part of the fatality review, pedestrian fatality review, and what came up again and again was that the pedestrian did not have a driving record with no license. So they're basically an uninformed person trying to understand the speed of the vehicle. And if you don't have that,
great point.
You're basically a 6-year-old on the street trying to cross the road. So, I totally agree, having all of that put together. These were great reviews, and like all good entertainers, they leave me wanting more.
Well, there'll be more. I know we're a few minutes over, but thank you all. We only received one comment online. It wasn't related directly to this conversation. We'll reach out separately. So there's nothing related to today. But we do want to leave you with one thing, because 1 year from almost today, hit it.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Nizer, Maryland Motor Vehicle Administrator and Governor Westmore's Highway Safety Representative. I invite you to join me for the Lifesavers 2026 conference in my hometown, Baltimore, also known as Charm City. You may think you know Baltimore, the Orioles, the Ravens, the birthplace of the Star-Spangled Banner, and steamed crabs, but there is so much more to discover here. Baltimore is made up of more than 200 neighborhoods, all with a unique history and feel. No matter where you venture, to the B&O Railroad Museum, the National Aquarium, or the Reginald F. Lewis African American History Museum, expect to be called HUN, a local term of endearment. Close to the Convention Center, you can walk up Federal Hill for some great exercise and beautiful views of the city. Don't miss the one-of-a-kind American Visionary Art Museum. From the unique to the bizarre, you'll be glad you dropped in. Rent a bike or take a walk along the 8-mile-long promenade. During your stroll, you'll see the Maryland Science Center, the National Aquarium at Baltimore, and historic ships like the USS Constellation. Venture a half-mile north to Mount Vernon to see Baltimore's version of the Washington Monument. Or continue on to Little Italy for some authentic Italian dishes. And no trip is complete without some dessert. In just half a mile, you'll find yourself in one of Baltimore's oldest and most haunted neighborhoods, Fells Point. with shopping, restaurants, cobblestone streets, and yes, ghost tours after dark, you might find yourself charmed for hours. No matter what neighborhood you choose to explore, be sure to experience the Maryland delicacy of steamed crabs and crab cakes. We can't wait to see you here for Lifesavers 2026 conference to experience all our Charm City has to offer.